It's the FIDE World Corporate Championship, and Nihal Sarin took on Anish Giri in the first round itself. It was Akshay Kalpa, the company which supports Nihal Sarin, against Optiver, the company which supports Anish Giri. Now, it's a wonderful initiative by FIDE because these companies, which have been into chess, which have supported these players, sponsored them, uh, would get recognition, would get recognized by the chess community, and I think that's a great idea. So it's 4 players per team. On the top board was this clash, Anish Giri playing with black against Nihal, and the game opened with 1 d4. Nihal plays d4, and to knight f6 he responds with the Trompowsky. This is known as the Trompowsky system, and you could expect Anish to be very solid. So he goes e6, and now the advantage of pinning the knight is that you can push your pawn to e4. But the downside is that after h6, you have to give up the bishop, because if you try to save it, then after g5, you will lose the e4 pawn. So after giving it up, queen takes f6. Now black has the bishop pair while white has the strong center. c3 was played by Nihal. The other main move here is knight to c3. And this is more aggressive because you're developing a piece, while c3 is more solid, you are strengthening the center. Now, usually, even for such encounters, you can expect Anish to be very well prepared. He played the move c5, which he had played against Duda twice before. Now, I would recommend this to be a very good weapon for you if you're playing this with black. Knight to f3. In one of the games with Duda, he went d5 and Anish took, queen takes, and played queen e6. Bishop c4, takes, knight a6, and eventually he equalized quite easily. He had his pawns running, and he later on went on to even win this game. Very, very nice position. So knight f3 was played by Nihal. He's also a very solid player, and Anish now took and gave a check on b4. Knight to c3, castles. Bishop d3, the bishop is angling towards the king. d6, and now came the move e5. So basically, Nihal played this a little too soon. Another game with Duda had continued castles, knight c6, bishop b5, bishop takes c3, pawn takes c3, bd7, and I think although white has the space, there are only 2 minor pieces on the board, and so black had already equalized quite easily. In fact, he might even be slightly better here. Now, that's why I think this system is very solid. Nihal actually put pressure on Anish with e5. He took, pawn takes, and now he ruined white's structure a bit. You see, now this is an isolated pawn, and he dropped back his queen to e7. Queen e2. Looking for some ideas here. Queen e4. So let's say if you play b6, you will simply be smashed after this double attack. So you can't do that. Knight d7 was played by Anisha, and a very interesting move. He could go knight c6, but the knight is slightly misplaced here. Let's say queen e4, g6, h4, like what happened in the game. The knight doesn't belong here. If it was on d7, it could go to c5 and instantly hit the queen and the bishop. So knight d7 was played, and here there was this game Sandeepan Chanda versus Anna Muzichuk, which continued rook d1, knight to c5, bishop b1, b6, queen c2 threatening a mate, g6, queen d2 now hitting the h6 pawn, castles, and I think black has equalized in this position, but the game remains very interesting. You see this rook lift came in, and then the other rook tried to join in, pawn went to f4, and now white managed to get a very strong attacking position. So you have to be very careful as black, although your position is pretty good. Like for example, in such a position, you have to find moves like queen g5 to keep the balance. Okay, Nihal went queen e4. Anish had to play g6. Queen f4, hitting the h6 pawn, king g7, and also sidestepping the knight c5 threat. Castles, knight to c5, and the bishop dropped back. Now Anish very quickly played b6. I thought he wanted to put his bishop on b7 here. But after h4, which is the first new move of the game, until now there was this game played in 92, Meduna versus Mali Sauskas, which had gone rook f e1. So h4, very logical. You want to soften up the king side with h5, and if black goes h5, you get this very nice square for your knight, and gives white an advantage. And here Anish played bishop a6, which was interesting. I mean, I was expecting bishop b7, knight d4 to happen, but he went bishop a6. And now after rook d1, which I was again thinking that in order to put the rook here, I think Nihal was afraid of bishop e2. When the threat is bishop f3, if you take with the queen, your h4 pawn is hanging, and gf3 doesn't look very pretty. Maybe rook d4 and the game goes on. This is an interesting way to play. But Nihal goes for rook fe1, bishop d3, and now comes an important moment where you have to avoid the exchange of the bishops. So bishop b3. If you take here, you improve the structure of white, and therefore Anish did not take the bishop. He went rook a c8, rook e3. Now the rook slowly planning to join in, and I think that here is where Anish went wrong. He pulled back his bishop to a6, which lost him a lot of time. He should have gone rook f d8. And then the position is still very complex after knight d4. I would, prefer white, because black has to find some moves like bishop f5 here. I mean, this is not easy, because g4 you have queen h4, which wins. So you're somehow hanging on there. And I don't think that's a great idea. It's not so easy to play this way. Anyway, he went bishop a6. And now Nihal was very happy as he dropped back this bishop. Suddenly now you can see that this attack looks real. With these 4 pieces, this looks like a very real attack. Knight d7. And now I was a bit surprised that Nihal didn't go for this move h5. I think if he would have played this, Anish would have been in some trouble for sure. Just a sample variation. g5, queen e4, threatening to checkmate here. Rook h8. And now I play knight to d4. After rook c5, to hit the e5 pawn, you go f4. And let's say after g takes f4, queen takes f4. I believe that this position is just completely busted for black. Oops, not rook e5 is a free rook. Free piece there. Rook g3 check coming up. The other rook can join in. I mean, this is just horrible. So maybe you don't play g5 here, but let's say you play a move like rook c5. Then after hg, queen g4, I have softened up your king to such an extent. I think Nihal has a clean advantage here as well. So knight d4 is what Nihal played instead of h5. And I think here Anish played rook c5, first hitting here on e5. And Nihal had to be slightly more careful here. He should have gone queen g3, I believe, with the idea of, let's say, f4 and then h5. And you can see the basic problem for black is he doesn't have breaks, pawn breaks. f6 is too weakening, g6 becomes weak. And when you don't have breaks, white can simply build up the position. I know this is weak, but you just protect it and then meanwhile keep going for the attack. When he went h5 here, I think Nihal just forgot that Anish had a very powerful defensive move. You might want to pause the video and try to figure out how should black equalize the game. Queen g5. The queens are exchanged, and that is the end of the attack. As you can see, the game quickly petered out into a draw. Rook takes e5, knight e5, gf, bishop c4, defending e6, bishop b3, rook e1, exchange the bishops, rook e3, and then both players made few moves. Knights got exchanged, and they agreed to a draw. So a great exciting game. Who knows what would have happened if Nihal would have played h5, trying to launch an attack. Also, you should notice that when h5 was played here, there was no chance of going queen g5 because the knight protected that square. Nihal put his knight on d4 and that allowed that defense. But in any case, you can see that Nihal, even in this 10 plus 2 format, which is quite a serious format than say 3 plus 2 or 5 plus 1, was able to put a lot of pressure on Anish, who is a world class GM. And that just speaks really positively for the future of Indian chess. I hope you enjoyed this video. At the end, Optiver beat Akshay Kalpa 3.5 half. All three other boards lost, but this was the real interesting game, and I hope you enjoyed it. This is Sagar Shah signing off. Bye bye.